Okay, we've got a couple of examples here of some conclusions we can make. Another diagram we're going to look at, and we want to make some conclusions in this diagram. What do we know is true in the diagrams? A question I would ask a lot in a geometry class. How do you know that this is true? What do you know is true, and how? Big things in geometry. So as we look, the first thing I like to look for are the congruent marks, and I see two congruent marks right there. Angle 1 and angle 2 are marked congruent. So that means that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. Easy conclusion to make. If I know the measure of angle 1, then I know the measure of angle 2. I don't see any more congruent marks, so what else do I know? As I look at this diagram, I see two lines that intersect because I'm looking for vertical angles. So as I do that, I see this line is intersecting this line, and so angle 3 and angle 5 are vertical angles. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means they're congruent. So I'm going to write angle 3 is congruent to angle 5. Why? Because they're vertical angles. And that might be something you might have to put in a proof. Why do you know that angle 3 and angle 5 are congruent? Because they're vertical angles. Angle 1 and angle 2, that would be given, something I said in the problem. So the reason angle 1 and angle 2 would be listed as congruent is because it was given that they were congruent. I know that angle 4 and the pair of 1 and 2 are vertical angles, but because over here we have two angles, we don't really talk about vertical angles there at all. I mean, I know some information about them, and I'll talk about that in a second. Well, we can talk about it now. You know that angle 4 is twice as twice as big as angle 2. You know that angle 1 is half the size of angle 4. So we could actually write that. We could say the measure of angle 1 is equal to 1/2 the measure of angle 4. We could also say the same thing for the measure of angle 2 is equal to 1/2 the measure of angle 4. We could say it another way. We could say the measure of angle 4 is equal to 2 times the measure of angle 1 or angle 2. Those are just various ways to say the same thing. One other thing I noticed, though, is we have some linear pairs. Angle 3 and angle 4 are linear pairs. What's true about linear pairs? They are supplementary. So we know that the measure of angle 3 plus the measure of angle 4 equals 180. Now, I can't just say angle 3 plus angle 4 equals 180. You have to say the measure. That's why I put the M there. It's the measure of angle 3 and the measure of angle 4. Add them together, that measurement is 180 degrees. That's also true for angle 4 and angle 5. So we can say the measure of angle 4 plus the measure of angle 5 equals 180. And that's basically what we have in that particular diagram.